As we did yesterday, today also, we will commence the deliberations with an invocation to the Lord. Please just repeat after me. We will have a couple of invocations to commence with. We are going to have a Namavali on Ganesha, then on Guru, and afterwards we will go for the meditation. Jai Ganesha, Jai Ganesha, Jai Ganesha, Pahi Mam.
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 Shri Ganesha, Shri Ganesha, Shri Ganesha, Raksha 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 Mam.
Jai Ganesha, Jai Ganesha, Jai Ganesha, Pahi 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 Mam.
Shri Ganesha, Shri Ganesha, Shri Ganesha, Raksha 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 Mam.
Jai Ganesha, Jai Ganesha, Jai Ganesha, Pahi 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 Mam.
Shri Ganesha, Shri Ganesha, Shri Ganesha, Raksha 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 Mam.
Jai Ganesha, Jai Ganesha, Jai Ganesha, Pahi 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 Mam.
Shri Ganesha, Shri Ganesha, Shri Ganesha, Raksha 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 Mam.
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 Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu,
Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu,
Guru Devo Maheshwara,
Guru Devo Maheshwara,
Guru Reva Param Brahma,
Guru Reva Param Brahma,
Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Ajnanatimirandhasya
Ajnanatimirandhasya
Jnananjanashalakaya
Jnana
चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। अखण्डमण्डलाकारम् व्याप्तं येन चराचरम् तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। अनेक जन्म संप्राप्त कर्म बंध विदाहिने आत्मज्ञान प्रदानेन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। मन्नाथ श्री जगन्नाथो मद्गुरु श्री जगद्गुरुः ममात्मा सर्वभूतात्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ब्रह्मानन्दं परमसुखदं केवलं ज्ञानमूर्तिं द्वन्द्वातीतं गगनसदृशं तत्त्वमस्यादिलक्ष्यम् एकं नित्यं विमलमचलं सर्वधी साक्षिभूतम् भावातीतं त्रिगुणरहितं सद्गुरुं तं नमामि। 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 हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे।
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare.
Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare.
Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya.
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 Today we are entering into this divine process known as meditation. Before we need to have the knowledge of God. To have the complete knowledge of stone, you need to have the complete knowledge of electrons and protons. Do you deny? In order to have the complete knowledge of a stone piece or a metallic piece, you need to have the knowledge of how the electronic configuration is, how the inner subtle things are. working in formulating the entity that is known as a stone piece, that is known as a metallic piece. When the subtle knowledge is so much necessary for the gross knowledge to be completed, which is the subtlest of the subtle, that is what we call as God. The subtlest of the subtle is God. So whenever you are interested to have the thorough and complete knowledge of anything, the knowledge of God will find relevance there. This is how Vivekananda found it extremely relevant and also became very much infatuated with having this knowledge of God, how he was moving behind everyone to have some glimpse into what really God was, etc., which ultimately brought him to meeting Sri Ramakrishna. When he put this question to Ramakrishna, Ramakrishna gives a revolutionary answer, a historic answer. Ramakrishna says, "Sir, have you seen God?" That was the question for which that was put by Vivekananda. Ramakrishna says, "Yes, I have seen God. I have seen him just as I am seeing you now. I have seen him just as I am seeing you now. Rather, I have seen him more clearly than I am seeing you now. Not only that I have seen him, I can show him to you also. Anyone can see him, but my dear lad, who is after all interested to have a vision of God at all? Who is interested? Who wants to see God at all? People can shed tears for the sake of so many mundane things, material things, but whoever has shed tears for the sake of vision of God, if you are so much inclined to have his vision, well, that can be obtained. You can have it." A revolutionary answer, a historic answer. The moment Narendranath got this answer, from now onwards, we see him totally steeped in having divine experiences pertaining to the existence of God. Many were the austerities, many were the occasions when he went into the deepest meditation, and ultimately it brought almost to the period when Ramakrishna was about to breathe his last. Ramakrishna, in between, has taken every opportunity to tell to Vivekananda that God realization is the ultimate goal of man. Whosoever he is, at whatever stage of evolution that he may be, God realization is the ultimate goal. If people are not that bent upon to have that as goal, at least the pattern of life that they have formulated for them must be corroborating, must be conducive for the realization of this ultimate role, that is God realization. With Narendranath is being taken from level to level, from one level to another level, about how man's existence must really be, how his life must really be. So that gradual moving from lower level to higher level is there. Almost now we come to the level of Sri Ramakrishna's departing from this world, when he summons Narendranath and transfers all his force, all his power into him with a mandate: with whatever power that I have given to you, you use it for the welfare of the mankind in general. That must be used for the welfare of the mankind, Jagat Hita. That must be used for Jagat Hita, he says, and Sri Ramakrishna breathes his last. But before this, there is a very notable, very interesting incident. 2-3 years before Sri Ramakrishna's passing away, as Narendranath was sitting just by his side, he casually asked him, "Naren, what do you want? What do you want?" Immediately came the reply, "Sir, I want to sit for meditation and lose myself in that samadhi, in the transcendental state, for days together, only to come out of that state once in 3 or 4 days. Even after I come once in 4 days or once in 3-4 days, I should have only a little of fruit or milk, and again I must immerse myself in that samadhi. Please grant me such a great state, such a state of existence, you please grant me." It was quite usual for a person like Narendranath, for a person who is a spiritual sadhak, to put forth such a request. But the reply that Sri Ramakrishna gave is remarkable. This is why I am touching this incident. What sort of reply that Sri Ramakrishna gave, that gives the quintessence, the culmination of Hindu philosophy of life. That is in fact the final topic, the final chapter in the subject of Hindu philosophy. What must be the culmination? How must be the culmination of man's life? What always man must seek to in his life? Krishna also puts it in the same way. Normally, we think moksha is the final goal of a Hindu. Many people are under that impression. Moksha is the final goal. But you know how the last chapter in Bhagavad Gita is termed? What is the name of the last chapter in Bhagavad Gita? Krishna or Vyasa calls the last chapter of Bhagavad Gita as Moksha Sannyasa Yoga, rejecting moksha. Even moksha is rejected, even that is sacrificed. This is exactly the essence of Hindu philosophy. You should not aspire for moksha also. Of course, till moksha is obtained, let that occupy the whole of your attention. Till you have got that moksha, let acquisition of moksha itself occupy the whole of your attention. But having acquired moksha, you are not supposed to stay there. You are to move even one step ahead. What is that? Now you must descend. You must bring yourself down to the level of the mortals, the ordinary human beings. And whatever energy that you have accrued by virtue of the acquisition of moksha, they all must be used for the welfare of the mankind, for the welfare of the all. This is what Ramakrishna says. When Vivekananda pleads him for such high state, such a divine state, Ramakrishna says, "Fie upon you. I never expected that you would be such a low man. I thought you would grow to be a huge banyan tree in the shadow of which, under which hundreds and thousands will come and take their shelter. But to my surprise, I find that you are hankering after your own individual liberation. Why? Why do you want to be immersed in Nirvikalpa Samadhi? Why? Why do you want to see God with your eyes closed? Anybody can see it, anybody can do it. What is great about that? Can't you see God with your eyes wide awake? Can't you see God with your eyes wide open? Find out for yourself what else you have got except God. It's only God that has taken the form of each and everything that you see around. Why at all you must be immersed in Samadhi? Rather serve everyone. That is as good as getting immersed in Samadhi only. This is the piece of advice that Sri Ramakrishna gives. This opened the eyes of Vivekananda. Afterwards he takes sannyas, moves along the length and breadth of India. Wherever he went, one thing was so much striking to him, that was the ignorance and the poverty of the masses. The moment Sri Ramakrishna said, you must be ever ready to sacrifice your samadhi also for the sake of serving people, this point is getting more and more momentum in his being. And now we see Vivekananda in search of means and ways whereby he can put an end to the ignorance and poverty of people. Everywhere, whether it was in Himalayas or elsewhere, this is something that has been affecting him. Now he has become totally restless. 7 years he moved here and there. From Calcutta to Kashi, he went a couple of times. He went to Kashi only to spend his life in deep samadhi, study of scriptures and all that. That is normally the life of a sannyasi. Well, Ramakrishna told to go even beyond samadhi. But Ramakrishna did not say in a specific language how exactly, now Vivekananda having tasted Nirvikalpa Samadhi, how exactly must be the way in which he must spend the rest of his life. He never gave any inkling. That he, Narendranath, Vivekananda himself had to find out for him. Ramakrishna did not show a specific path. To find out the way, he had to move here and there. Some sort of that force, inward, some sort of inner force used to draw him from place to place. First he went to Kashi. Then he befriended with some gentleman by name Pramadadas Mitra. With him he studied all the scriptures and all that. As he went deeply into the scriptures and all that, there came upon him a firm conviction that the sages of Rishis have done remarkably by putting Hindu philosophy in such a way that it should make anyone spellbound, anyone dumbstruck to see the beauties of even modern science quite reflected there. As he acquainted himself with more and more the beauties of Indian philosophy and all that, now he has come to a position whereby he is thinking very seriously in terms of, with so much invigorating philosophy behind this, with such a wonderful lifting sources of energy behind us, how is the country steeped so much in ignorance and poverty? What is the way out? Can I do anything by meeting princes, rajas and maharajas here and there? With that intention, he comes out of Himalayas, and now we see Vivekananda visiting all rulers of India of those times. First he comes to Khetri. He spends about 1 month there. He moves on to Limdi in Gujarat. There also he spends some time. Comes to Porbandar, meets all the leading people. Afterwards, Vivekananda says, I wanted to meet all these rulers of India, and I wanted to explain to them, unless the British were driven out of the country, there was no way of salvation for us whatsoever. I wanted to collect them all. I wanted to organize them all so that they all could be organized into one strong united force with which the foreign yoke will be thrown out, and afterwards we will be left with our own plans and programs to improve the country and bring about so much of development with the people here. But to my dismay, I found there was no life left in any one of them. There was no life in them. They were material combinations. Swamiji refers to them in many of his letters and says, I find everywhere not human beings. There is no vigor in them. There is no life left in them. What can I expect from them? Sometimes he refers to us as material combinations, mere material combinations. Lumps of clay. What can I expect from them? The lumps of clay. There is no energy. Lumps of clay. Encrustations of ignorance. These are all the adjectives that he has used to refer to us. Encrustations of ignorance. Lumps of clay. Material combinations. What can I do? Of course, he moved with the educated sections of Hindus also during those times. How were the educated sections of Hindus? In one of the letters he says, I am not born to live one of those caste-ridden, superstitious, hypocritical, merciless cowards that you can come across only among educated Hindus. This is the description he gives. I am not born to live one of those merciless, hypocritical, caste-ridden, superstitious cowards that you find only among educated Hindus. Where is the future for the country? Where is the future?
It hasn't changed.
Yes, definitely. There is no cause to change that. Unless we prepare, we create causes, effects will never be changed. This is the most important doctrinal beauty that courses through Indian wisdom. Even such a simple and quintessential thing we are not able to take cognizance of. We are not in a position to observe that. So he was left with only one choice. Just at that time, there was announced that a Parliament of Religions was to take place in America. Now, he hit upon a plan. He has written in one of the letters, I am going to America. I will shake that Western world with my spiritual and intellectual powers. I will get help from them. Come back to India. Start schools, colleges, industries, etc. here. I have got a few men whom I can count as my sincere followers in almost all the cities that I have paid a visit to. I will organize these young men. With them, I am going to rebuild India. He puts in one of his letters. We see that the moment the news he heard, definitely there did develop a desire in him. Many people at that time, in fact, also were insisting upon Vivekananda, having come to know that first Parliament of Religions was to be held in America, that he should represent Hinduism and all that. In fact, the first such inkling came to Vivekananda's mind in Gujarat only. We have got many Gujaratis here. They all must feel happy that. When he was with one Shankara Panduranga, Diwan of Porbandar, Shankara Panduranga was educated in the West. And when he was Diwan of that Porbandar state, he was translating Atharvana Veda into English. At that time, Vivekananda came to that place, and having come across Vivekananda's extraordinary brilliance of spiritual knowledge and all sorts of, the knowledge that anyone can come across, Shankara Panduranga was prompted to have him as his guest for some time so that he could derive some help from Vivekananda also in this translation work. Later, Shankara Panduranga recounts in one of his sayings, he says, one day he was forced to compliment Vivekananda through a passage like this. He says, Swamiji, if I just spend 1 hour with you, I feel as though I have suddenly gone through about 500 books. I have gone through suddenly about 500 books and my head is reeling. If I just converse 1 hour with you, that is the extent and depth of the knowledge that you have got. Definitely, this country is right now not in a position to make use of a man like you. You may please go to West. They alone can understand you. They alone can really appreciate the depth of knowledge that you have got. Like that, that was the first suggestion that Vivekananda received in the West. Afterwards, he comes to Maharashtra, comes to Pune, meets Tilak, comes to Mysore, spends some useful moments with the Maharaja of Mysore. When the Diwan of Mysore, Sir Sheshadri Iyer, came across Vivekananda, he was spellbound. He was so dumbstruck at that magnetism and the depth of his personality. Again, took him to Mysore to get him introduced to Maharaja. He spent about 1 month there. During his stay, Maharaja used to spend a lot of his time. On one such occasion, Vivekananda is known to have given a beautiful advice to Maharaja of Mysore. That was, he says, You must look upon your citizens as though your own children. You are a trustee of God's property. You can't claim ownership on that. You can't claim any ownership on that. You are a trustee of God's property. You must look upon your citizens as your own children. From America, he writes also a letter to the Maharaj of Mysore, in which so beautifully he says, the vanities of the world are so transient. They alone live. Who live for others, the rest are more dead than alive. This is the style in which he used to write, in which he used to speak. Typically Vivekananda, he always speaks fire, he writes fire. His words are fiery, so sharp, so brilliant, straight, touching to the point that he wants to touch. There is nothing like beating around the bush, no protracted methods at all. Many such utterances we can come across. Roma Rolla later, a French savage, a French savant, you can say, when he writes about the biography of Vivekananda, he says his words are a music, a Beethoven music. I feel an electric shock through my veins as I go through his utterances, and what shocks, what transports must have been experienced by those fortunate lords when they heard him straight from his lips. This is how Roma Rolla pays a tribute to Vivekananda's utterances, his writings and all that. After developments in India, we see Vivekananda coming to America. While he was in Madras, even before that, when he was in Kanyakumari, this feeling had totally taken possession of him. He went to Kanyakumari temple. As he was coming out of the temple, he developed a desire to go to that extreme tip, that island, and spend some time in meditation. But there was no boatman ready to take him there. He was a penniless, he did not even a paisa with him. But the boatman would not oblige him by taking him to that island nearby. If anyone has seen that Kanyakumari rock where that Vivekananda Memorial is constructed today, it is almost 1 mile from the shore. But there was the desire was so strong, he flung himself into the water and swam across the ocean and spent 3 days and 3 nights without taking a drop of water, without taking a morsel of food. He put himself in that deep meditation. What was the object of his meditation? India. How to improvise the conditions in India. What can I do so that the glory that is lost can be brought back? He bitterly weeps. He says later, he recounts, while I was in Kanyakumari, I had gone there with a firm resolution that unless I came out with a clearly defined plan about how to improve India, I should not come back. Either I am going to put an end to my life there, let my body perish. I have to come out with a plan. That was the resolution with which I swam across. And my Gurudev is always by my side. I hit upon a plan. There came a clear conviction to me that I should go to America and seek their help. So thinking, he swims back, goes to Madras, makes acquaintance with so many people like Alasinga Perumal, etc., who later sent him to America here. He comes here via Tokyo. When he was to travel from Yokohama in Japan to Vancouver here on the west coast of Canada, it seems, J.N. Tata, Jamshedji Tata, was a fellow traveler with him. As usual, Tata was so much fascinated, so much attracted by this wonderful personality of the Swamiji. They befriended with each other. Having come to know that Tata was a great businessman, Vivekananda says, why don't you set up one Science Research Institute in India? Tata, people like you must be possessed with the thoughts like how to contribute to the glory of your country, how you can bring about development in your country. You can't remain silent. You can't remain oblivious of the cravings, the needs, the cries of your own country. We need to develop that social impulse. Now that you have been blessed by Lord with so much of riches and all that, now you must do something for that. The best way of serving your country is to spread the science and technological education among masses, with the help of which only they can earn their livelihood. So Tata took it very seriously, and later when he returned to India, very seriously pondered upon starting one research institute. Vivekananda also suggested the place as to where this institute must be started. He said, you can bring one such institution in Bangalore. Later Tata brought it out into reality, and we know Tata Institute of Science, which later came to be known as Indian Institute of Science, which even today is giving its wonderful service for the development of the country. So behind the founding of this Tata Institute or Indian Institute of Science, there is the role of Vivekananda. This is how, wherever and whenever he has come across a person whom he thought could do something, he never let that opportunity go unused without inspiring him. He wanted to orient every possible resource towards the development of the country. India, India, India. That one thought occupied his mind day in and day out. There was absolutely nothing else or nothing more that could have the fascination of him. India, India. The very pronunciation of the word India would make him go into transports to New Year experiences. He was India, miniature India. India summarized. He was frozen. That is how Rabindranath Tagore later describes him. When Roma Rolla, this French servant, met Rabindranath Tagore in Switzerland, he expressed a desire, Roma Rolla expressed a desire that he wanted to write a book on India. And he pleaded to Tagore to suggest a source material for that. Tagore immediately and clearly says, if you want to know India, study Vivekananda. Everything is positive in him and nothing negative. That is how he was. So he comes to Vancouver. From there he catches a train and comes to Chicago, where that first Parliament of Religions was to be held. But to his dismay, he found that the chairman of the organizing committee was not to register his name as a delegate, representative of Hinduism. He was not prepared to accept Vivekananda as representative of Hinduism. Why? He had not brought the requisite credential. You have not brought any letter from anyone saying that you are an official representation from Hinduism. There is no any such letter. There is no any such endorsement from your own people. We cannot accept you. This is the typical Western way. And that is the typical Eastern way. Always resigning everything to God. God will take care. God will take care of Vivekananda. But why at all God should take care of each and every one? Does he not have anything else to do? It's okay for God really did take care of him. But is the same God taking care of each and every one? There is terrorist problem in Kashmir. God will take care. There is Naxalite problem in Karnataka. God will take care. See, about this particular development, Sister Nivedita makes a beautiful reference. How many good friends that Vivekananda had before he left for America. Balagangadhar Tilak he had met and both of them had become good friends. Maharaja of Mysore, Haridas Viharidas Desai, Diwan of Junagadh, Maharaja Khetri, Ajit Singh of Khetri. Many people, high places, almost all Diwans in Western India and Southern India. And also Professor Sundaram Iyer from Ernakulam, Travancore. Justice Subramania Iyer from Madras. All those highly educated, high-placed people. It did not strike to anyone to give a letter of introduction to Vivekananda when he was going on such a grand mission. Swamiji came empty-handed. And what was the result? He straight he declined, we can't accept you as a representation from Hinduism because you don't have the credential. What to do? He resigned himself totally to the will of God. But the pocket was running empty because this is American life. He had brought some rupees from there. How long those rupees can last? Somebody suggested, sir, Chicago is very costly. Please go to Boston. Comparatively, it is cheap because it is an educational center. Any educational center more or less will be something like, it won't be so much costly. Only the business center will be very costly. Educational centers will not be costly because only teachers and professors dwell there, It can't afford to be a costly country. Huh? In Canada, they say Badamaster, a very poor teacher. In India, that is proverb, a poor teacher. Teachers are always poor. They can't amass wealth. They have got their own riches. Their riches are always recorded in the head. They are all treasured up in the head. That is the type of the riches they have got. Anyway, these are the ways of the world. He went to Boston. As he was moving to Boston, right in the train in which he was moving, one lady came across him. She was Miss Sanborn, Mrs. Sanborn, Catherine Sanborn, Mrs. Catherine Sanborn. Vivekananda had got a tremendous advantage. That was his very appearance would attract people and would give a very clear indication that he was a man extraordinary. Later, this Catherine Sanborn recollects, When I saw him, I went on seeing him. I could not turn my gaze from him. He was the finest specimen of manhood I have ever seen. She was a journalist, remember. How many people she might have come across. He was the perfect specimen of manhood. So manly, so manly. Even Ramakrishna used to say, if Atman, that is so much described in Upanishads, the glory of which is inexhaustible, if Atman takes the human form, it looks like Narendra. Ramakrishna used to say, Narendra is such. If Atman takes human form, it looks like Narendra. He is a sword taken out of the sheath. Even Mahamaya, even Divine Mother Mahamaya would not dare approach him. He is so extraordinary. He is a mountain of that spiritual strength. He is a burning mountain of that spirituality and renunciation. Even Mahamaya would not dare approach him. Such an extraordinary personality has become, an extraordinary man has become by her own grace. It is by her own grace that he has become like that. But even though it is the thing, even she cannot muster all the courage and energy to move near him. That is Narendra. How much Ramakrishna has praised his Shishya. How many times we see Ramakrishna comparing him even with Keshav Chandra Sen. Just a boy of 18-year-old Narendranath sitting in the midst of people that are gathered before Sri Ramakrishna. Among them there was Keshav Chandra Sen also. Sri Ramakrishna looked at Keshav once, afterwards he would look at Narendra as though he was comparing these two. Immediately he burst out into a remark, oh, in Keshav, that knowledge is something like a glimmer. That knowledge is something like a glimmer. In Narendra, that is the blazing sun. Keshav is just a 5-petaled lotus. Narendra is 1,000-petaled lotus. In Keshav, the depth of knowledge is maybe about 3 feet or 4 feet. In Narendra, it is unfathomable. An 18-year-old boy, a 55-year-old man, internationally renowned, after Keshava left, Keshava kept quiet, did not react. Because no ordinary man is telling that. After he left the place, Naren took Ramakrishna to task. You have become a monomaniac. Always thinking of me. I appear to be superior to anyone else. What will people think of you if you talk like this? Where is Keshav Chandra Sen? Where am I? And what was Keshav Chandra Sen? Such a remarkable fellow. When he went to London and interpreted Bible in the public lecture, Queen Victoria would sit at his feet with hands folded. Victoria would sit there with her hands folded, attentively listening to Keshava's interpretation of Bible. That was Keshav Chandra Sen. And with him Ramakrishna is comparing Narendranath. And how is that comparison? But you see, even though Narendra objected for that and in fact took Ramakrishna to task, later events clearly tell that yes, every bit of what Ramakrishna had foreseen and interpreted about Narendra came out with so much truth compounded with compound interest. Every bit of what he had said came true. It was a reflection of the highest reality. So here, this lady is here to once again almost speak in a similar vein. When I saw him first, I could not turn my gaze anywhere else. He was a perfect specimen of manhood. Later, she approached Vivekananda and said, Sir, if you don't have an objection, you may remain my guest for some time. Vivekananda was just waiting for someone to invite him to his house where he could find at least some means for filling his belly. Will someone invite me and feed me? Where to go? My pocket is empty. What to do? After 2-3 days, maximum 2-3 days it may last. When thoughts of this type were really tormenting him, here is that lady that approaches. Swamiji readily agreed, and as she was about to prepare food for Swamiji, she went to the neighborhood, the next house, and the next house was occupied by one Professor John Henry Wright, who used to teach Greek in the Harvard University. He used to teach the language of Greek. She went to that professor and said, I have come across a very interesting fellow from India. He appears to be an extraordinary personality. Will you engage him in some conversation for some time? The professor said, I don't have time to engage myself in conversation with Tom, Dick and Harry. I can't do it. Just because you are asking, I don't mind spending some 5 minutes with him. So Vivekananda went to the professor. The professor was ready to spend 5 minutes. Not 5 minutes, not 5 hours, not 5 days. They spent together 10 days. And the professor would not leave Vivekananda, even though Vivekananda wanted to leave him. Later, professor's wife writes a letter to her mother saying, I don't know what has happened to this John. This Indian mystic might have totally hypnotized him. He is not leaving him at all. Day in and day out, he has taken the discipleship of him, it seems. In that vein, she writes a letter. It was typically so. Professor John Henry Wright remained almost a sincere friend of Vivekananda all through the days that he was in this earthly existence. The first acquaintance was John Wright, and he remained up to the last. It is exactly this gentleman who will come to Vivekananda's help later. We will come to see that soon. So, when he was able to fathom the depth of Vivekananda's knowledge, he was so much moved and said, he gives a beautiful remark, Swamiji, after Columbus discovering my country, I am sure a person of your type had never visited my country. You must be introduced to the whole America at large. Not only me, you must be introduced to the whole America. And I think the easiest way to do that, you must please take part in the Parliament of Religions, which is going to commence only in about 1 month, 1.5 months. Now Vivekananda feels, what can be his feeling, you can imagine. This is exactly the purpose for which I came here, but I have been declined a chance by the chairman of your reception committee, who was Burroughs, Dr. Burroughs. Professor almost was to burst out into a laughter when he heard that. How at all they could ask for a credential from a person like you? Did they ask you for a credential? Swamiji, to ask you for a credential is like asking the sun to show his right to shine. It is something like asking the sun to show his credential to shine. Doesn't matter. I give a credential myself. I know Dr. Burroughs very well, the chairman of the reception committee. So saying, he gives a letter of introduction. There runs a sentence worth presentation here. What was that sentence? Here is a monk from India who is more learned than all American learned professors put together. That's how he wrote. A wonderful introduction. We can't imagine anything better than this. When Swamiji brought this to Chicago and presented this, he was given a chance. The rest is history, we know. The moment he uttered, sisters and brothers of America, 7,000 people rose to their feet, applauded for a full 2.5 minutes. It was so roaring, so thunderous. Even Swamiji felt whether did he commit any mistake at all by calling them as sisters and brothers of America. So wonderful was the reception that he received. He had not prepared at all for any speech. He just spoke for about 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes. If you count the words, it is not more than 348 or so. 348 words, lasting for about 2.5 minutes or so. Afterwards, he felt exhausted and sat down. But next day, all the newspapers in one voice said he was the greatest attraction in the Parliament of Religions. Chicago Tribune, Washington Post, New York, Detroit Journal, all papers all along the country were there praising Vivekananda, saying in one sentence that really he was the cynosure of all the eyes. He was given 7-8 times an opportunity to speak. Really, so many opportunities were not to be at his disposal, but the audience were so much insistent that Vivekananda should speak. Otherwise, they all would get up and go away. When chairs are empty, whom at all the speakers are to address to? At least to keep the audience held in the room, the program organizer would say, at the end, Vivekananda will speak for a few moments. Just to hear for a few moments to Vivekananda, they would simply offer all their patience to these dry talks, lifeless talks for hours together. They would simply keep quiet, waiting for Vivekananda to speak for about 2 minutes or 3 minutes. So when that was the situation, he had to speak almost at the end of all days. There comes the final session in which Swamiji puts it so beautifully. Even in the very first lecture, he told wonderfully, I represent a legacy, I represent a tradition according to which only the ways are different, but the goal is one. Every day we in India, all boys, while they offer their worship, etc., they say, just as wherever the rivers may be having their origins, just as they ultimately come and empty themselves out into the ocean, similarly, whatever may be the path that we may choose for reaching the goal, ultimately we all come to the same point. This is how the spiritual wisdom of my country says. We believe in universal tolerance. We also believe in universal acceptance. When Jews were thrown out of Israel, my country welcomed. When Parsis were thrown out of Persia, my country welcomed. There is no man whom my country has rejected any entrance to. We have been cherishing their memories in our bosom. They have been living with us like sisters. India is a land of harmony. I am proud to say I belong to that grand heritage of rishis who have presented the world with such wonderful discoveries, before which even the most modern scientific discoveries simply appear as echoes. Like that his speech goes. The third day or so, he presents a paper on Hinduism. Most extraordinary thing. Hinduism can never be dealt with in a better way. So beautiful is that. In a nutshell, he brings out all the essence of Hinduism and all that. On the final day, he says, I pity him from the bottom of my heart. If anybody thinks that his religion alone should exist to the exclusion of all other religions. That can never be. Diversity is the law of nature. Therefore, diversity will be the law in spirituality also. We need to exist as diverse ways, but in and through, it's possible for all of us to have one uniform or one unity. We can have unity in and through them. So, ultimately, the central essence of his message was, we need to maintain that unity in diversity, that policy of unity in diversity in our spiritual pursuits also. He quotes 2 verses from Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna said, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tams tathaiva bhajamyaham mamavartmana vartante manushyaha partha sarvashaha. I approach everyone along his own way. All people, though they are moving along diversified ways, ultimately they are all coming to me. This he quotes. And there is one more verse in Bhagavad Gita which Vivekananda did not quote, but of course worth a quotation now. Yo yo yam yam tanum bhaktaha shraddhayarchitam ichchati tasya tasyachalam shraddha tameva vidadamyaham. Men follow different paths only having been enjoined by me. I have put their nature such that they have to take different diversified ways. It doesn't mean to say they are going to different goals. The goal will be same. Whatever may be the way or the path which they are pursuing, I reach once again along the same way. I develop, I put them established along that way only. I nurture them, I make them develop themselves along that way only. There is not any necessity for anyone to give up his individual freedom just because he is coming towards the point of moksha. You can preserve your individuality, still come to the same goal. Almost he speaks in that way. He worked about 2.5 years, 3 years in America. Twice he visited England. In America, many lectures he gave. Afterwards collected about 12 people to Thousand Island Park near New York, held classes for them for about 2.5 months or so. They became adepts in Hindu philosophy. It is those people that worked as his representatives after Vivekananda left for India. When Vivekananda makes up his mind that he should leave America and go to India to take up the work there, he wanted, of course, he left from London. He takes a ship from London and comes to India through Vatican, through Rome. First he arrives at Colombo and lands on Indian soil. What a coincidence is that, you see. Lands on Indian soil on 26th January 1897. 26th January 1897. That was the day that he lands on Indian soil. And what was the type of welcome that was waiting for him? Indian history has never seen such a welcome accorded to anyone, be he an emperor, be he anyone. Such a welcome was never accorded to anyone in the whole history, recorded history of India. That is how Hindu people wrote. That is how many citizens, senior citizens of those times in India said. From Colombo up to Almora, he goes on speaking fire, especially in Madras, where he stayed for about 13 days or so. He delivers about 7-8 lectures and each one under such a, catchy caption, Sages of India, my plan of campaign, how India should be rebuilt, the essence of Hinduism, something like that. He goes on speak. There used to be tremendous response. They say sometimes people somewhere around 1 lakh, 1.5 lakh people used to assemble to hear. I do not know how he could address to such a huge gatherings and all that. The campaign continues up to Lahore, where nearly about 50,000 people had gathered. And there he speaks on that beautiful subject, the essence of Vedanta, for 2.5 hours. So that is how Vivekananda's, that one can say the martial campaign could find itself through the cities of India, comes to Calcutta. Now he decides that on a permanent basis, some institution should be started. It is here that we see Vivekananda in a totally different dimension, a great organizer. Here we see Vivekananda integrating Vedanta with the service of the masses. Till now, spirituality and social life were diversified. They were diverse. Even though those people who are given to much of spirituality, they have nothing to do with society. People that are living in society, they can't undertake any spiritual practice as long as they are in society. To have spirituality, you have to live society. To have all your social requirements accomplished and attended to, you have to say goodbye, or at least you have to keep aside all spiritual cravings and spiritual caterings. That is how we used to think. But when he comes to start that Ramakrishna mission and gives the laws, etc., the objectives before Ramakrishna mission, we feel lost. How at all a monk, an unrenouncing monk, can make a reference that monks here must start industries, monks here must start hospitals, monks here must start universities, they must start colleges, they must also have relief camps, and every aspect of human development, human service finds a place in the objectives of Ramakrishna mission. In fact, many of the brother disciples of Vivekananda were so much more, Naren, what is it that you are doing? I think 2.5 years stay in America has told upon your attitude and your vision very much. Our Guru never bothered to tell us anything about all these things that you are putting as objectives and all that. Vivekananda takes him to task. Don't minimize your Guru in your own vision. He was inexhaustible. You think whatever that Ramakrishna has appeared to you is all that he is? He has covered from your vision hundreds of other faces which I might have been able to see. Afterwards, he addresses people in Calcutta and all that, in Himalayas, and inspires people through letters and all those people, and all those things. In all these utterances, letters, one thing becomes very predominant, that is, as long as even a dog is starving in my country, the religion I preach, the God that I uphold before you for your adoration is give it the food that it needs. As long as the dog is starving in my country, my religion is to feed it. As long as there is a widow who is weeping, the dharma or the religion or the God that does not wipe out the tear of a widow, that does not care to feed a starving stomach, I don't believe in that dharma or in that God. If by doing so, I can help at least one person, I am prepared to go to hell 1,000 times. People that can call themselves as my children must be ever ready to sacrifice their everything for helping men, wherever they are, under whatever banner they may be. No distinction of caste, creed, nationality, race. Serve. Service is the one thing. Where else you see God? If you can see God in an idol, can't you see the same God in that living idol? It is in this way, the vein that he writes. So many letters he writes. Many people got inspired. The young men of India got extremely inspired. The result was that within 5 years of his passing away, there was the national renaissance in India state in England. You know what was the text of the letter? We are amazed to find hundreds and thousands of young men and women, I would put it again. We are amazed to find hundreds and thousands of young men and women stretching out their chests against the bullets of British with Vande Mataram on their lips and words of Vivekananda in their heart. This is the report, secret report that Governor of Bengal, British officer, wrote to Secretary of State of India in London. We are amazed to find hundreds and thousands of young men and women stretching out their chests against the bullets of British with Vande Mataram on their lips and words of Vivekananda in their heart. Mahatma Gandhi writes, having gone through the works of Vivekananda, the love that I had for my country increased 1,000-fold. Chakravarti Rajgopalachari says, Vivekananda saved Hinduism and saved India, but for him, we would not have got our independence and would have lost our religion. Subhash Chandra Bose says, what a versatile personality he was. He gives the description, beautiful description of how Vivekananda was in most wonderful. He uses gems of English language as adjectives to describe Vivekananda. Finally, he says, had he been alive today, I would have remained at his feet. This is what Subhash Chandra Bose says. Jamshedji Tata, Rabindranath Tagore. One greatness about Vivekananda is he has inspired diplomats, he has inspired poets, he has inspired scientists. Everyone has here while he was in America. William James was the most noted psychologist from Harvard University. James attended every lecture of Vivekananda. Hiram Maxim, the scientist behind the invention of machine gun, remained an ardent devotee of Vivekananda. Hiram Maxim had a house in Paris. Whenever Vivekananda went to London via Paris, he used to stay with Hiram Maxim. When second time he came to West, Hiram Maxim gave letters of introduction to all the Rajas, all kings and prime ministers of all the countries that Vivekananda visited, because they all used to have deals with Hiram Maxim, as he had started one factory to manufacture this machine gun, which of course is a necessity for any king, any army and all that. Nikola Tesla, the inventor of the tube light, he attended all the lectures and discussed with Vivekananda about so many intricacies in science. In one of his Raja Yoga lectures also, Swamiji says, without wire also you can transmit vibrations. Media are not necessary. Today you use wires and all that. Even without wire, you can transmit radiations. Remember, wireless was not invented at that time. If you go through Raja Yoga book of Vivekananda, Jnana Yoga, a compilation of lectures that he delivered in London, most wonderful things. Both as a beautiful piece of English language and also an interpretation of most intricate Indian philosophy as it is applicable and appealing to the modern mind in the language of science. Vivekananda stands out as unique, most wonderful. 9 books you have got, into which his complete works run today. Even today, he is a source of inspiration for hundreds and hundreds of people. To quote just one example, if you go to Maharashtra, you can come across one great personality by name Anna Hazare. Many of you might have heard of him. Perhaps you don't know the details of what made him to enter into social service on such a large scale. He was working for Indian military earlier. Indian military. He got some 20,000 rupees or 25,000 rupees as the retirement fund. As he was returning back to his village in Maharashtra, the train journey was very much boring. He got out of train in Delhi and went to some old bookshop there only in the station, got one book. It was The Life and Teachings of Swami Vivekananda, written in Hindi. He got that book, and through his rail journey, he was to go through that book. That was the intention of him. That's how he did also. By the time he reached his place, he was a totally transformed personality. This particular sentence that Vivekananda told to the Maharaja of Mysore, the vanities of the world are transient. They alone live who live for others. The rest are more dead than live. It brought about a revolutionary transformation. Whatever 25,000 rupees that he had, he decided they must be spent for the sake of the village which he belonged to. Immediately what he did was, he repaired one Hanuman temple that was in the dilapidated condition in the village, and thereby won the reverence and respect of all the villagers. It was in dilapidated condition for several decades. Nobody had bothered to repair. This man did that. That was enough for the people to hold him in high esteem, to hold him in high respect and all that. They used to gather around him every day and listen to him also. Now and then he would say something about Ramayana and all that for about a year. He wanted to just prepare a ground for him. Later, one day on Vivekananda Jayanti, he came out with one pronouncement. You see, you are not going to drink anymore. You are not going to smoke anymore. You are not going to waste away your time in idle chats and all that anymore. I will prepare a plan according to which you all must come and offer 1 hour of your service to me, with which I am going to improve this village. I don't want to see any poverty, any illiteracy, any ignorance, any evil practices finding a place here. So when he started speaking in this language, after all, people anywhere or everywhere want a person who properly can guide them and definitely work for their own welfare. When he could tell them with all sincerity that he was only to uplift these people that he has been undertaking all these programs, they offered their help and they constructed check dams and all that. The water, when it rains, so much of water will flood itself out. All those water was not to flow out. They were all retained then and there only. Check dams were prepared and all rainwater was conserved. The result was all the dried up bore wells started getting recharged. There was a lot of water in the bore wells. The farmers used to get some water. They could now go for some farming. They were able to get some thousands of rupees. Almost it was a continuous practice to move to Goa whenever there was a drought. There was no drought at all. Even a little of rain could be sufficient for them as far as their water requirements were concerned. So like that, the village started witnessing a very wonderful changes in a period of about 4 or 5 years. Afterwards, he built a good school also. He appointed his own teachers, whom he used to have a strict vigilance about the activities of. So like that, there was brought about wonderful reformation in the field of education. The neighboring village learnt a lesson out of it. They also invited him to undertake similar measures there too. And now today, if you look at there, you will come across 85 villages where he has brought about a revolution, literally. Virtual revolution. There is no poverty, there is no ignorance, there is no illiteracy, there are no evil practice, no drinking, no liquor shop. Everyone has got enough work to do. Almost one can say they have definitely, they are on the path of progress. They have sufficient to eat and something to store also against a drought or against any sort of ecological art or whatever it is. This transformation just went through one Vivekananda book for half a day or 1 day. That the book was taken from a old bookshop. Today, he is the talk of the whole country. Not now, IAS officers are being directed by Chief Minister to go to Anna Hazare to learn from him how to bring about rural development. IAS officers are directed. Chief Minister will have to seek appointment even before he goes to meet this man. He has to take appointment. He doesn't entertain all those people. Don't come and waste my time. I have got so much to do. That's how he normally replies. Indian Administrative Service IAS officers are going to Hazare to learn from him how to do this rural service activity and all that. This can give you two phases. One phase is how much a Vivekananda inspiration can work out its scheme. Today you have Dr. Sudarshan working in Karnataka, you know, Vivekananda Girijana Seva Sangha. He has brought about revolution in the tribal people in Mysore area of Karnataka. Dr. Sudarshan, who was a brahmachari in Ramakrishna Mission, did not want any mukti or any moksha for him, took away the white dress that he had, went out, wore pants and all that, went to that Bilgir Rangan Betta. Even today he remains a brahmachari, he's a bachelor of course, he has got a band of people. He has brought about a revolutionary change in the whole tribal area where you can see about 10,000, 20,000 tribal families and all that. And the children that studied in his school now are doing their doctorates and some of them have become engineers and all that. In my own school, which I did even before I took sannyas, just as a matter of fancy, somewhere in 1989, that all started as one cricket team. I gathered some college students and formed a cricket team out of them. We wanted to play cricket every evening. I was so fond of playing cricket during my college days. So when I went out of Bangalore, I had no occasion to do, collected some high school friends and all that. I told, I will teach you mathematics free of cost, so that they would come to me. I made a cricket team out of that. Later, it hit upon, why should we not start one Vivekananda Seva Sangha? We started one Vivekananda Seva Sangha. Someone suggested, please start a school. We started a school. Today, a rural school, getting national level prizes every day for the past 3 years. We are getting 100% results in SSLC every year. One of them has gone to MBBS, 2-3 of them have gone to dental surgery, BDS, and more than 15 to 20 of my boys have gone to engineering. They could never imagine that they could go to engineering during their lifetime, but that transformation could be brought about by me in a humble way, though not in such a big way as Anna Hazare or Sudarshan did. Just a mention of the name Vivekananda, it will work out a miracle. It will work out. So much is the source of inspiration one can find in that great personality that Vivekananda was. Through his letters, especially if you go through his letters and his lectures from Colombo to Almora, available both in all Indian languages and also in English, you feel an electric shock. Ranganatha Anandji, how many people everywhere, almost today in Karnataka at least, more than 50 IAS and IPS officers were influenced by Vivekananda. They wanted to become something else. Swamiji, I got second prize for singing when I was in high school days. My principal presented me with one book, Thus Spake Vivekananda. I went through it. Immediately I decided I must become an IPS officer and put an end to all this menace in my place. Now today I am an IPS officer. How many number of times I have listened to such accounts from IAS and IPS officers from Karnataka, you only know. So what I mean to say is, here is one extraordinary personality that just lived for 39 years, 5 months and 24 days. He had asthma, he had all sorts of physical ailments. In spite of that, how he worked. American newspapers used to call him a cyclonic monk. How much of opposition he has to face here, Christian missionaries? Would they leave him so easily? Because he shook the foundations of this Christendom. How much of an anti-propaganda the missionaries, etc., had done about Hinduism. Wherever he went in America, in fact, people used to shoot at him the questions, such unbearable questions. Swamiji, is it true that the girl children, the girl babies in your country are thrown to crocodiles whenever they are born? Do we throw the girl babies to crocodiles whenever they are born? Has India done it? Even in American textbooks, if you go through those 6 volumes, New Discoveries of Vivekananda Study in America, written by a Western lady only, Mary Louise Burke. There, Vivekananda, that Mary Louise Burke produces a sheet. There she gives an extract of a textbook that was prevalent during Vivekananda's times. When Vivekananda went through such a book, he was in tears. And how many times he has wept in America, remembering the plight of his country and also knowing the type of the anti-propaganda that his country was subjected to. One day, he went to the extent of saying, while he was addressing one assembly, one audience, he was so much moved, he did not hesitate to speak in the language like, if whole India takes into its hand the mud at the bottom of Indian Ocean, and if it throws it on the faces of you, Westerners, remember, we have not done 1/1,000,000th of injustice that you have done to us. He spoke in that way. How much pain he must have been. If whole India takes into its hand the dirt at the bottom of Indian Ocean and throws it on the faces of you, Westerners, we haven't done 1/1,000,000th of injustice that you have done to us. What have we done to you? Why do you paint us in such a derogatory way? Go through your textbooks. This textbook menace is not of today. It is more than 100-year old. It is only taking its new form. Everywhere, so much of it, especially in Detroit. How many derogatory articles appeared against him, especially in Detroit Journal, one newspaper printed, The Gains of Vivekananda in America. Under that caption, there is Vivekananda's photo, and he has held 2 kamandalos in both the hands of him. In one kamandalo, he has got dollars of America. In the other kamandalo, he has got women of America. This is how he was portrayed in the Detroit, The Gains of Vivekananda in America. He was so much so, he was haunted, and he was, in fact, attacked so much so that one day he profusely started shedding tears, and he was simply lying quiet, not knowing what to do. Twice they tried to kill him here. Once he was asked to come for some boating or something like that. Swamiji was prepared. He was a great lover of adventures and all that, right from his school days, early days. He was able to go for boating. Ramakrishna appeared in his subtle body and said, "Don't go. Don't go. They are trying to kill you. They may throw you into water. There is a plot behind this. Don't go." Before that, of course, Vivekananda was not a man to believe in all such things in first hand. Before that, there had taken place another incident. He was invited to somebody's house, and he was offered a cup of tea there. When he was about to take that cup, Ramakrishna held his hand, held his wrist, and in an unseen forum, he told, "Don't drink that, don't drink that." Swamiji would not believe it. So rational minded he was. Again, he was about to take the cup and take a sip out of that. Ramakrishna again held his wrist and said, "Don't drink it," I said, "Naren, they have put poison there. They have put poison there, don't drink it." It became clear to Vivekananda there was a plot behind. Afterwards took place these incidents which he did not want to verify anymore, as it was Ramakrishna that was protecting him on how many times he was tried in ways like this, and how many times the hosts of Vivekananda received ugly letters from unknown addresses. "Please don't entertain this heathen from an unknown land who may be of dangerous character. You have grown-up girls in your house." Vivekananda was so much moved one day without knowing anything, not knowing what to do. He was profusely in tears and he had almost collapsed on his bed. Ramakrishna just appears there and said, "Don't bother yourself with all these remarks and all that. They are not human beings, they are creatures. They are worms crawling on a lokna poke." He puts in Bengali. Uthogere stands up, he puts his speaks in Bengali. Uthogere lokna poke. They are not men, they are not human beings. They are insects, they are creatures. Why do you bother about all those things? This rejuvenates him. And he says, in one of the letters he said, "Detroit battle has not subsided yet." He says in one of the letters, Detroit battle is not finding any quick, termination. But mother, to one of American ladies, he has written that, perhaps to Sarah Volleyball of Detroit or Mrs. Hale of Chicago, he writes that letter, "The more I am opposed, the more I am bent upon to leave a permanent mark on that place." That's how he writes. So he did that. Today we see so many centers that have sprouted in the name of Ramakrishna. But by and large, America in general, barring a few people, many Americans liked him very much. There used to be praises for him. People used to pour upon him praise in a very vigorous way. Full-fledged praises used to be there. Wholehearted praises used to be there. Second time also he came. He was given a very warm reception, a very heroic reception, kingly reception. Second time too, he stayed for about 1.5 hours or so. First time he concentrated on the east coast. Second time he concentrated on the west coast. Today America remembers him fondly. Only recently, American government has brought about a book in which they have got the portraits of 25 or 30 of the greatest men that have ever visited America. The 20th article is on Swami Vivekananda. American government has recognized, the whole West has recognized, but we need more and more people to consolidate upon the initial grounding, the initial pedestal that he has created for us. An edifice has been created. We need to build upon that. It must be the duty of every Indian to see that the purpose for which he sacrificed his life, how comfortably he could have lived. Ramakrishna has said, if Naren wants, he can as well lead a royal life. Nothing is impossible for him. At his mere wish, everything will happen. So extraordinary. He has such an intellectual and spiritual powers, he will shake the world to its very foundations. He will shake the world to its very foundations. Every bit of the prediction that Ramakrishna gave came true. So much, so enormous, so versatile, extraordinary was his personality. But there was only one purpose for his earthly sojourn, that was to help mankind. He very clearly puts, while he was talking to one friend in London, "I may find it easy to get out of this body of mine, only to throw it away as though it is a worn-out garment. But I shall not cease to inspire men everywhere till the whole humanity will come to know that it is one with God." I shall not cease to inspire men everywhere till the whole humanity will come to know it is one with God. So what is the quintessence of Vivekananda's teachings? This is all his teachings. He says, "I have no program beyond training men." That's what he says. I have no program beyond training men. And what does he mean by saying training men? I want to set in motion a machinery that will take to every doorstep the message of freedom, the message of strength, the message of divinity. I will inspire hundreds and thousands of young men who will move along the length and breadth of this country, taking the message of divinity and message of strength to every doorstep. That also he says. And about religion, he gives his own that beautiful definition. Each soul is potentially divine. This is what Vivekananda exactly wanted all of us to know and also work up to, live up to. What was that? Each soul is potentially divine. There is the potential divinity inside. Each one has got the ability to become God. That is what is meant by potential divinity. Each one is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity by controlling nature external and nature internal. By controlling nature external, by controlling nature internal, you can manifest this divinity. Do this either by work, or by love, or by intellectual analysis, or by psychic control, by one, by more than one, or by all of these, and be free. This is the whole of religion. So, by controlling nature external means science. Through science and technology, we must control the nature external and find out means and ways for our material affluence. Poverty is nothing that Indian philosophy ever suggests at all, ever aspires for, or ever asks anyone to go after. Poverty is something that we are not supposed to have anywhere. That is so clear in the whole of Indian philosophy. It never encourages poverty, it never encourages weakness, it never encourages helplessness, it never encourages destitution. If a monk appears to be so much impoverished, the poverty has been taken voluntarily upon him. If he engages himself in the acquisition of wealth, etc., precious time will be wasted upon that, and therefore he will be left with no time and energy for other things characterized by the inner penetration, the inner energy, the exploration of the inner world. To provide himself with sufficient time and energy and initiative for all that, naturally he has to keep the external pursuits as secondary things. So therefore, if there is any poverty in India, at least according to Indian wisdom, poverty must be voluntarily created and voluntarily accepted, not out of the helplessness. Helplessness is something that we abhor. It is something loathsome for us. We loathe that. We can never entertain that anywhere in our vicinity. So poverty out of voluntary acceptance is all right, not out of helplessness. So by controlling nature external through science, technology and all that, you must have sufficiently to attend to your material needs, but that alone will not do. This is what West has to learn from us. External control of nature alone will not do. There is always a counterpart inside, a corresponding word inside. There is a word inside also. If you are just a kindergarten boy, as far as the ways of the world inside are concerned, then once again you are going to land yourself in a helpless condition. In addition to the achievement outside, an equal achievement must be there inside. How is this to be done? That is to be done, that is to be pursued through the spiritual life. Spiritual life and material life, both must be there. Both must be strengthened and both must be integrated. How to go for the achievements in the inner life? That is through any one of these yogas. Either through Karma Yoga, Vivekananda has spoken on Karma Yoga, his Raja Yoga, there is a book on Karma Yoga, book on Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and all the 4 yogas that he has made a reference to. You can go through those books and come to know detail about how to achieve that inner enrichment also. So, nature external must be conquered, nature internal also must be conquered. When you have conquered both the natures, then your divinity is manifest. This is the completeness of man. That is the complete man. A Vivekananda was one such complete man. A Ramakrishna was one such complete man. It is these complete men alone who create history. And as far as others are concerned, they can never be the creators of history. Maximum, they can be the creators of history. Definitely not creators of history. So, this is the possibility in each and every one of us. So, Swamiji, even education he wanted to tune to this particular purpose. He says, education is the manifestation of perfection already in man. On similar lines, he defines religion as, religion is the manifestation of divinity already in man. So, perfection is there already. Divinity is also there already. You can even say perfection when he says, he more refers to the external world. When he says divinity, he more refers to the inner world. So religion and education, if properly performed, properly accomplished, it will make man a complete man. Thereby, you have realized all your possibilities which till now perhaps were lying there, untrapped, unused, unawakened, unroused. So to rouse that, we need a call, we need an inspiration. Vivekananda himself can offer the best of inspirations. Today, even Muslims, the other day I was saying, in Karnataka, especially the place where I have my center in Gadag, we have a program. Whole Gadag district, all schools and colleges must have one Vivekananda study circle. Already we have started about 25 to 30 Vivekananda study circles. One day, I wrote to the principal of a Muslim college, Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad College of Science. It's a Muslim college, obviously. I wrote to the principal. I have been opening up Vivekananda study circles in all the colleges of the town. On that mission, I am going to pay a visit to your college too. I want to know the response from you. The principal wrote back, Swamiji, please come. You can open one Vivekananda study circle in our college also. I went, spoke about the relevance of having one such forum there, where all Muslim students, Muslim boys and girls, they listened to me for about 2 hours. For about 1 hour, 1.5 hours, it was lecture. Half an hour or 1 hour, there was question answer session. It all lasted for about 2.5 hours and half an hour bhajans in the beginning. But it was a 3 hours program. We started one Vivekananda study circle also. Later, 2-3 girls started coming to ashram regularly. And one of them wanted to take sannyas and dedicate her life for the sake of Vivekananda. And today she is with me. Of course, we don't entertain girls in our Ramakrishna setup. She has been serving as a teacher in the school that we are running in near Bijapur. She has known whole Lalita Sahasranam by heart. She does that Lalita Kunkumarchana every day. She has changed her name as Lalita only. Her parents don't know all those things. If they come to know, that will be end of her. She knows it. So for the outside world, she is Asma. For her own personal affairs, she is Lalita. Every day she gets up at 3:30 in the morning and does puja to Ramakrishna with all sincerity. Takes head bath every day and does that puja. By the time all other people are getting up from their bed, she will have completed her puja every day. This is how she has been working there. She is in charge of one sericulture section. As I said, we have got so many poor students in our school. We want to give them some job employment training also. Many of them come from the rural background, farmers' children and all that. They come from the agricultural background. So we are training them in this sericulture. Perhaps you know what is meant by sericulture. We have a mulberry farm and those sericulture worms also will be there and they will be fed. All our boys are trained. In 28 days, the crop will be ready. Every 28 days, the crop will come. The purpose is, after the completion of education in our school, when our boys don't get any employment outside, they need not worry. If they just 1 acre of land where they are planting this mulberry and they are doing sericulture work, every month they can earn nearly 10,000 rupees, not less than that. And 10,000 rupees for a village man is an extra, it's a big, huge salary for him. A high school teacher gets so much of money, not anyone below the rank of a high school teacher. So with this in mind, we have got that self-employment forum. She is in charge of that self-employment project. And she has been doing her work wonderfully. I only told this to tell you how even upon a Muslim mind, a Vivekananda influence can work. Its influence. No Christian, the other day I was telling, in Shumagga, where we have got one school for blind, Sharada Devi Andhar Vikasa Kendra, that is the name of that school, that was started in 1986, 150th birthday anniversary of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. There we used to celebrate Vivekananda Jayanti on a very large scale, collecting about 25,000 high school children with huge banners and all that. One Christian father, he led the procession of about 1,000 boys from his school and joined this procession. Christian father came out of the school, he led the procession of his children and joined this huge procession that ultimately culminated in Nehru Stadium in Shumagga, and we had a gathering of about 25,000 people whom the guests addressed and all that. That was how Vivekananda Jayanti was celebrated. A Christian father does not mind leading the procession of his students to join Vivekananda Jayanti. A Muslim girl does not hesitate to offer her life for the sake of Vivekananda by taking to sannyas and all that. If this is not inspiration, what else is? Even now, with all so much hue and cry that our boys are going astray, our girls are going astray, never an Indian boy, I mean a Hindu boy, never a Hindu boy, never a Hindu girl can go astray. Our boys are angels, they are veritable gods and goddesses. This I am not telling. Swami Harshanandaji, the president of Ramakrishna Math presently now, today, in Bangalore, he says, he was in charge of a residential school in Mysore for about 20 years. One day he said, on the basis of my experience with student community for 20 years, I can with firm assurance and conviction say, even now the blood of our rishis is flowing in the veins of our boys. Even today the blood of our rishis is flowing in our boys. If Harshanandaji said that, Chinmayanandaji put it in a different way. Indian boys are not useless, they are useless. They are not hopeless, they are hopeless. And this is more interesting. What you are going to hear is more interesting than what you heard. He continues to say, therefore, they are not going to divine centers, they are going to wine centers. Why? We are not giving them what they deserve. We don't give them a rousing message. If we simply parrot-like repeat certain things which are age-old, which are stale, which do not produce any effect upon them at all, well, they turn their backs and they will go according to their own pursuits. Give them a heroic message. A message that is expressed in the language of fire. We need people that can speak fire. We need people that can impart this heroic message. Where else? We get it in plenty in Vivekananda. Whether it is Ranganathanandaji or Purushottanandaji or whoever it is. Whosoever goes out to schools and colleges with the thundering of Vivekananda's message, during the time the program is on, the whole school atmosphere will be reverberating and there is a new atmosphere. You will find on the face of every boy a line beauty, a line character. How? This is what inspiration means. We have such a great, most inexhaustible, tremendous source of inspiration, but we need people to take out this inspiration to all schools and colleges, all doorsteps. As Jesus Christ has said in Bible, harvest is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Harvest is plenteous, but the laborers are few. So this man appeared on the eastern horizon of India in 1863. 1902 he was no more. Most interesting, he breathed his last on American Independence Day, July 4th. Sri Ramakrishna breathed his last on Indian Independence Day, August 15th. What a coincidence is that? There is some connection between India and America, between Vivekananda and Ramakrishna, between Vivekananda and Ramakrishna and India and America. There is a very subtle relation, and all these things are complementary to each other. There is nothing like an exclusive existence for any of these things, if only we can understand. I very clearly see that these two countries will have to work in unison with each other for the benefit of both. A day may come, and let us wish that comes at the earliest. That is the reason perhaps why Vivekananda had to come here. Why at all Parliament of Religions was to be held here only? This is not Vatican, this is not Rome, this is not Constantinople, this is not Palestine. There was no reason why at all the first Parliament was to be held. And a Hindu came. For what purpose the Parliament was held? Later Vivekananda recounts. It was definitely conceived. Parliament was conceived to propagate before the world at large about the superiority of Christianity, but God willed otherwise. But God willed otherwise. God willed otherwise for the good of Christianity only. God showed to all Christians one very important lesson which they would never have learnt otherwise. What was that? Each path is valid, each path is correct. We are all moving along various paths, only ultimately culminate in one point. Just as our tastes are various, our minds are various. When tastes are various and minds are various, why at all we must pursue a uniform path? We can take different foods, still be healthy. We can wear different clothes, still be dignified. We can pursue different branches of education, still be educated. Why should we not pursue different religions and still be spiritually perfected? You can follow diversification in all other pursuits. Why not in spirituality? But the Semitic religions are yet to capture the beauty of this wonderful wisdom. It was up to India to teach the whole world at large about the rationale behind this wonderful wisdom. Since ages we have been doing, way back when that great Rishi about whom we don't know anything, when that extraordinary personality proclaimed to the whole world, which Vivekananda calls as the Magna Carta of Hinduism, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti. He set the tone for all future developments. The real spirituality was written in the clearest language at that day only, and it was inaugurated as to how the spiritual pursuits must ultimately find their logical conclusions. In spite of these things, why must we be narrow-minded? It's up to man to use his sense of discretion, to use the ability to discriminate, and the ability also to exercise those hidden faculties inside in order to arrive at the truth. Because human birth has bestowed upon you so much ability, so much energy, by using which we can definitely raise ourselves to the level of gods. That is, in fact, the ultimate aim of every man. That is what Krishna held as the aim of man. When Krishna expounds the philosophy for man in order to render his existence most meaningful, he knew the human limitations, and therefore, with Arjuna as the symbol, as the medium, he addresses the whole humanity and says, "Oh Arjuna, just follow a fraction of the philosophy of life I have given. It will free you from all limitations, all anxieties and afflictions. Swalpamapi asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat." Most of your tensions, your fears, your stress will be over. It will be blotted out if you just follow a fraction of the philosophy of life I have expounded before you. In spite of such conveniences, in spite of such advantages, if we do not open up our eyes and try to bring perfection into our existence, where we have to blame ourselves and no one else. To highlight all these things that Vivekananda came, to re-echo all those things, to refer to all these things in a beautiful language, the language that will be appealing to the modern minds, the language that will be having all the sense of scientificity. In that Vivekananda came and he accomplished his task more than what was expected of him. So to such a great man, we all must offer our salutations. Whole humanity must remain grateful to him. Sri Ramakrishna says, Naren will remain the cynosure, the central point of all intellectual and spiritual thought process for the next 1500 years. That is the thing that the Guru was so fond of paying a compliment to Shishya. And Shishya, on his part, when he came back from America and when he was given that royal reception in his own hometown, Calcutta, when people went on pouring upon him the showers of praises, one after the other, in all Indian languages, and the presentation of the acclamation of Vivekananda service itself consumed more than 3 hours on the day of that program. Ultimately, when Vivekananda stood up to address to those people, he concluded his speech saying, "If at all I have done any good in my life, either through the action or through the word, I lay no claim to that. It is his, Ramakrishna's. It is his. If anything paining, anything painful, anything derogatory, anything in a negative direction has ever been caused by me, I owe the responsibility for that. I owe the responsibility for that. If only Sri Ramakrishna wants, he can just throw away a handful of mud and produce 1000 Vivekanandas out of that. That was his ability. So I offer whatever I have done to his holy feet." In that way, Vivekananda speaks. So the advent of Sri Ramakrishna and Vivekananda is a new chapter in the book of human glory and human development. We need to study this chapter, understand and assimilate and convert ourselves into extraordinary human beings who are nowhere less than even the divinities. That is the purpose for which they have come. And with this, I conclude my remarks. Thank you all.
Prayer Bhakti.
Yes, yes. As usual, let us conclude with Asatoma Sadgamaya. Asatoma Sadgamaya.
Asatoma Sadgamaya.
Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya.
Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya.
Mrityorma Amrutangamaya.
Mrityorma Amrutangamaya.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
तत्सत्
हरि ओम तत्सत्।
श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु
श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु।
श्रीरामकृष्णार्पणमस्तु
श्रीरामकृष्णार्पणमस्तु।
जय श्री कृष्ण भगवान जी की
जय।
जय श्री राधा माई की
जय।
जय श्री गुरु महाराज जी की
जय।
जय श्री महामाई की
जय।
जय श्री स्वामी जी महाराज जी की
जय।
जय श्री सनातन धर्म की
जय।
जय भारत माता की
जय।
Well, I'd like to thank Swamiji for coming here and talking without a break for the last 7 days, trying to enlighten us. I'm very grateful to Swamiji for coming here and enlightening us, and hopefully we will follow the path he has showed to reach the ultimate goal of humanity. And I will ask Swamiji to bless us to go in the right path and to eventually reach the goal. And if anybody is interested in making donations to Swamiji's cause in India, I have left a couple of papers here. Please write your name and your address, and there is an envelope there. You can leave the check there, and the check can be written to my name, Hemachandra Venkatesh. Thank you all for coming and supporting.